What I want to do is just comment on some key themes that I see emerging from each of the papers, having read them all in entirety. And what I see are three themes have emerged from me, that each of which are comprised of some moments of brilliance that are embedded in the papers that really speak to me powerfully, as well as some key tensions that I think are important for us to grapple with as we collectively move forward with our work. So the first theme that has emerged for me from reading each of the papers that I think applies to all of them is it's a pedagogical one. It's concerns our pedagogical practice and the pedagogical practices that are being examined and studied. My background's in pedagogy. I greatly enjoy opportunities to really think about what's going on in a given classroom context or what's happening, what we're actually doing. And I see kind of that knowledge of what it is we're actually doing as being kind of an essential prerequisite for accomplishing one of our main purposes in self-study, which is how do we improve what we're doing. So I see shining evidence, I see shining moments of there being evidence of what is actually being practiced in the different teacher education contexts represented in the research here. For example, I see some evidence of actively negotiating with other people, opening up negotiation processes through providing choices or options, trying to engage in some processes of dialogue, making changes to syllabi, trying to include varied perspectives that maybe aren't traditionally represented. I nevertheless feel like when I'm reading the papers that these moments are fairly fleeting and fairly brief. So I feel this tension between kind of the self-study, which I'm seeing represented very deeply, and kind of the rest of the sentence of SSTEP, which is the teacher education practice piece. So as I'm reading the papers, I'm yearning for more insight into what is the actual practice that's playing out here. What's actually going on in these classrooms? What's actually going on in these communities? So that's one piece that I wanted to bring attention to. The second theme is that of transformation, that each paper is responding in a very concrete fashion to the context in which the papers were inspired, that each one is responding to some sort of deeply rooted familiarity on behalf of the participants involved with like authoritarian practices, and therefore trying to counter that context by constructing more democratic relationships, being in a co-constructing mode that's more reflective, that's more dialogical, that's more collaborative. So I see evidence of that. I see lots of reference to wanting to create a better world, wanting to foster equity and social justice. But nevertheless, I feel this tension when I'm reading the papers between saying this and talking about it and actually showing that this is happening. So I feel this tension about, what is the actual evidence? If there's some sort of transformation taking place, whether it's positively or negatively, what is the evidence that is supporting these claims? I yearn for more detail there, more specificity, more elaboration. I'm sure you have it, I just want to see it. The third theme that I see cutting across each of the papers concerns that of community. There's a consistent thread throughout each one of not just looking inwards and therefore doing the self-study, also looking outwards, recruiting other perspectives, recruiting other participants to form a support system, to form a team, a collaborative approach, whether it be critical friends or whatever, to kind of work together and solve these problems collectively. Kind of an effort to find comfort and community, create a safe space. It's a very recurring theme through each of the papers, kind of collaborating with like-minded peers. And obviously that's very important, that's very integral to all the work that's being done here, and I think that's exemplary. I nevertheless feel this tension that surfaces throughout of kind of this safety, kind of a tension between safety and challenge. Are we collaborating with others, seeking out others who are of like-minded of like minds to an extent that's, this is already safe, we're already comfortable, we already know these folks. Are we also making efforts to broaden out and maybe broaden our community, maintaining our existing community while also expanding that community? Are we taking those challenges? Is there room for that in our work? Just a question I want to pose. The overall theme of this session was seeking democracy through self-study, and I think that there's evidence, very strong evidence of that process playing out in each of these papers. Last year I heard Ken Zeichner speak a little bit, and I think a lot of us are familiar with his paper about accumulating knowledge across self-studies to kind of build a cumulative way of furthering our practice. And I think that by being more specific with our practices, providing strong evidence for what we do, and doing that in a way that both maintains safety while also challenging us, I think that will only help our efforts to create conditions in which democracy can flourish in our work as teacher educators. So those are some comments that I got from reflecting on the papers, and thank you for everything.
Thank you.